If you have ever driven past a group of crows standing completely still on a lawn, something about it probably made you slow down. Not because anything was obviously wrong, but because the silence itself felt unusual for a species that is almost never quiet. You may not have stopped, you may not have known what you were looking at, but you noticed, and the part of you that noticed was picking up on something real. What you saw was not random. It was not a coincidence. Scientists have a specific name for what was happening in front of you, and understanding it will change how you see crows, permanently, starting right now. Welcome back to If you are new here, subscribe before you leave. What you are about to understand changes not just how you see crow death, it changes how you understand crow intelligence, crow memory, and exactly where you fit inside their world. Stay until the end. I saved the most important finding for last, and when you hear it, you will understand why it had to be last. In 2015, Dr. Kaylee Swift of the University of Washington began what would become the most detailed study of crow behavior around death ever conducted. She placed a dead crow in a location where local crows were known to forage and watched from a distance, taking careful notes on everything that followed. What happened has now been replicated across multiple locations, multiple crow populations, and multiple years of observation. The foraging stopped immediately. Crows in the area called out, an alarm-style vocalization distinct from their feeding calls, and within minutes, birds began arriving from the surrounding area. They did not come to feed. They did not investigate the body as a potential food source. They gathered around it, formed a loose perimeter, and went nearly silent. This silence is what catches people off guard. Crows are one of the noisiest birds in any backyard, always calling, always competing, always communicating across territory. A crow assembly that goes quiet is something you feel before you fully understand what you are seeing. They stayed for minutes at a time, watching, not interacting, not calling, and then, without any obvious trigger, they dispersed. Swift documented this happening again and again, with remarkable consistency. The gathering, the silence, the watching, the dispersal. The instinct most people have when they witness this is to call it grief. It looks like grief. It has the visual vocabulary of grief. The community gathering, the silence, the stillness around someone who was part of the group. But Swift's research points towards something more interesting and, in some ways, more unsettling than grief. The crow funeral is, at its core, a survival operation. The dead crow has information the living crows urgently need. They need to know where it died, how it died, and whether whatever killed it is still in the area. The gathering is an intelligence assessment. The silence is concentration. Every crow in that perimeter is reading the scene, the position of the body, the objects nearby, the humans or animals in the surrounding area, the sounds and smells that were present before the death. All of this goes into each crow's working model of what is now dangerous in this specific location. Swift's research showed that crows attending the gathering of a crow that died near a specific human became measurably more cautious around that person afterward. Not around humans in general, around that specific individual. This is what separates crow funeral behavior from almost anything else you will see in your yard. The funeral is not performed for the dead. It is performed by the living, for the living. To understand exactly what just became dangerous, and why. Here is where the story moves somewhere most people do not expect. The information gathered at a crow funeral does not stay with the crow that gathered it. It moves through the population. In earlier University of Washington research, researchers wore specific masks while handling dead crows in the field. The masked face was encoded as dangerous. That encoding was then shared with other crows that had not been present at the original event. When a completely different researcher wore the same mask weeks later, they received the same alarm response. The crows had not seen that face before, but they had been told about it. What makes this directly relevant to crow funerals is this. Every crow that attends a funeral is not just learning something for itself. It is contributing to a shared record, a continuously updated map of what is safe and what is dangerous in this specific territory. That record will be passed to their offspring, who will pass it to their offspring. The behavioral memory of a single event in your neighborhood can persist in the local crow population for decades, long after the birds who were present at the original gathering have died. University of Washington researchers documented crow grudge behavior lasting over 17 years in some cases, far beyond the lifespan of the individual birds who had the original experience. The information had outlived its origin. Now here is the part that Swift and her colleagues are careful to discuss. When you study crow funeral behavior closely, something emerges that does not fit neatly into the information gathering model. The gatherings last longer than they need to. The silence is deeper than the situation seems to require. The crows do not simply observe the body and leave once they have gathered the relevant survival data. They stay, sometimes much longer than any purely informational purpose seems to demand. And in a smaller number of documented cases, crows have been observed bringing objects to the site of a dead crow. Small things, fragments, pebbles, materials, placed near or on the body. This behavior is not universal. It does not happen every time. But it has been documented in enough independent cases across enough locations to make it genuinely difficult to explain as a byproduct of information gathering. What Swift writes in her published research is something scientists rarely put into words this directly. The behavioral profile of crow funeral gatherings, she notes, exceeds what would be needed purely for information transmission. There is something else in it. Not grief as you experience it, not human mourning, but something in the architecture of the behavior, the silence, the duration, the occasional incomprehensible gesture of placing an object beside the dead, suggests a mind doing something more than downloading survival data. Whether that constitutes grief in any meaningful sense is a question that honest researchers will tell you remains genuinely open. Crow pairs mate for life. Their offspring, called helpers, often remain with the family group for 1 to 5 years before establishing their own territories. This means that when a crow family processes the death of a group member, the information enters a multi-generational transmission system. Juveniles born after the original event are taught to recognize the specific dangers their parents identified. The faces, the locations, the patterns that preceded loss. What was learned at a funeral becomes part of the inherited knowledge of the next generation of crows in that territory. What this means for your yard is worth sitting with for a moment. If crows in your neighborhood have ever gathered near your property, near your yard, near a location associated with you, you are part of that event in their record. Not necessarily as a threat, but as context. As a data point in a map that has been building, quietly, for years. The territory around your home is being mentally maintained by birds that will live for 15 years, teach their children, and carry forward a detailed account of everything that has happened in this specific place. You exist in that account. The only question is what category you occupy. If you witness what you believe is a crow funeral near your yard, the most valuable thing you can do is exactly what the crows are doing. Pay attention. Stand still. Do not approach. Do not make noise. Watch how many crows gather. Note how long they stay. If the assembly is calling out, you are witnessing active alarm transmission. Birds are being summoned and briefed in real time. If it is quiet, you are witnessing the deeper behavior that researchers are still working to fully characterize. When they disperse, they will remember where they were. They will remember what surrounded them. And the next time they see you, the information from that gathering will be part of what shapes how they respond to your presence. Here is what I find genuinely remarkable about crow funerals. A crow brain is roughly the size of a walnut. It contains no cortex in the way a human brain does. And yet when one of its group dies, that brain does not simply react and move on. It gathers, it observes, it encodes, it transmits. And, in ways that science cannot yet fully account for, it does something beyond all of that. Something in the silence. Something in the staying. Something in the occasional documented unexplained gesture of placing an object beside the dead. Whether that constitutes grief is a question honest researchers will tell you remains genuinely open. But the question itself is no longer dismissible. The crow in your yard right now, the one that watches you from the fence post in the morning, is carrying the record of every death in its territory. Every gathering. Every face that was present, every risk that was logged and transmitted. It is